It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome to the Age Has No Limit podcast. I am super excited to speak with Shadi Sadeghi. So Shadi is a global traveler and recovering corporate professional from Washington, D.C., who recently lived in 10 countries over 10 months. She is a certified life coach in Jungian Psychology and an Emotion Code Practitioner with over 15 years of personal development experience. Her unique method, and it is definitely unique. Wait until you guys hear all the wonderful things that she combines. It combines depth psychology, Eastern philosophy, social neuroscience, and emotional energy work. And she uses all of that to guide her clients through the transformative process of awakening to their true selves. I can't wait to dig into that. She helps men and women worldwide overcome obstacles with ease and consciously create more authentic, soul-led relationships and careers through coaching and energy work. Shadi is particularly focused on assisting individuals navigating major life transitions, and she's had her own, so she has some experience with this. Shadi lives a no-limit life. In 2021, again at the age of 41, she quit corporate life, left her East Coast home of 22 years, moved to Italy, which is one again of 10 countries where she lived in 10 months. And so the interesting thing is that she said that she's never had the courage to become a soulpreneur until she left the USA. So we're definitely going to dig into that. Shadi, welcome to the Age Has No Limit podcast.
Thanks, Patrice. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to start with your amazing trek around the world. I won't say around the world. It doesn't necessarily mean they were around the world. It could have all been in the Western Hemisphere or the Eastern Hemisphere, but it was still 10 countries. Tell us, what are some of the countries you visited, and which one would you say resonated the most with you and why?
So that's like asking which is your favorite child. Because they're all different and unique in their own way. So I set out, let me rewind. So before I even decided to make the leap, I had a vision of being on my deathbed and never having lived in Europe. And that to me felt like I felt this pang of regret. And I was like, but I want to know what it's like to live in Europe. I want to, to like walk out onto the cobblestone street and you have your, cute little baguette in your bag and you're grocery shopping and you're having coffee. And I just said, I need to do this. I had no attachments, no mortgage, no kids, no relationship at that time. I said, this is a chance to do it. I saw a vision of Italy. Which is funny because now I live in Orange County in the Laguna Beach area, which if you look at it, it looks kind of like the Italian Riviera. So I'm wondering if maybe I was just imagining that. But regardless, so I went to Italy and I left it open because as an American citizen, I'm limited by the 90-day visa in Europe. So and I didn't have a job, and I had heard through a lot of people it's very difficult to get a job in certain European countries, even as an American citizen, even if you're, very qualified and experienced, it's difficult to get a visa. So I just kept it open. I said, you know what? I'm going to do 90 days in Italy, experience, the Italian life, and see how I feel, where my path leads me. So I was able to leave the Schengen zone, and a good friend of mine was actually living in Cyprus, which is not part of the Schengen zone. So that's what typically a lot of digital nomads do, is they kind of hop between the Schengen and the non-Schengen zone, because you can only be in the Schengen zone for 90 days in I think in a 6-month period, every 6 months. So I went to Cyprus after that. And then after Cyprus, I stopped in Greece to fly back home to the States to go to my best friend's wedding. So I was in the States, and then I went to a wedding in India. after that. So
Wow.
flew straight New York to Delhi.
Mhm.
And then I was trying to get back to Europe after India. So I had not planned it. And listen, for this type A,
Mhm.
old type A
Yeah.
personality, this was like a big, I'm like, I'm just being open.
Yeah.
I'm going to be open-minded. This is my year of
Yeah.
exploring and, life in Europe. So I
Mhm.
was trying to get back to Europe while I was in India, and the flights were super long and expensive.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, what's the cheapest flight out of here to a somewhat desirable destination? And the Maldives came up.
Oh, I love that. That's a nice,
That was a
somewhat
bucket list
desirable
for me.
location.
Right, not too shabby, right?
Yeah,
So
right?
then I bought my ticket to the Maldives, and it was off season at that time.
Mhm.
It was April.
Mhm.
So I lucked out with housing. I'm telling you, sometimes when you just are open and kind of
Yes.
just want what you want and go after it, things
Yes.
fall into place. I
They
can't
do.
believe, looking back at it, I'm like, I cannot believe how things kind of just fell into place. Maldives, are you kidding?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
ended up staying in the Maldives for a month because I
Yeah.
loved it. And I did the resort experience, which
Mhm.
was very typical postcard, what we see, the Instagram influencer life, right, in the Maldives. And then I went to a local island, which most people never get to see or experience. It's a very conservative country. So
Mhm.
that was unique. I love that. I wanted to be part of the locals. That was this whole experience too. And then after the Maldives, I flew to, I remember looking at a map. I was like, where do I want to go?
Mhm.
And I was like, what are the nonstop flights? That's it. And so
Oh,
from
yeah.
there, I went to Vienna. There was a nonstop flight from
Maldives to
Mumbai
Vienna.
to
That's interesting. Wow.
Vienna.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad because I was only planning to be in Vienna for a few days, but I fell in love with it. And apparently,
Mhm.
it is for 12 years in a row now, it is the number one most livable, best city to live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I stayed in Vienna for a month. And
Mhm.
then from there, I knew I wanted to go to Hungary
Mhm.
and see Hungary, Budapest. So I traveled through, but then I knew I wanted to live in Croatia.
Mhm.
I'd heard so many things about Croatia. I'd never been.
Mhm.
So I did Croatia for a month and I fell in love with Croatia as well.
Yeah, I've
I
heard.
think that's the country I end up usually choosing to answer your question. And then after
Oh.
Croatia, yeah, I
Mhm.
like Croatia feels like a second home. It still has my heart, and I
Yeah.
haven't been back yet since I
Yeah.
lived there. And then after Croatia, I finished in Italy appropriately because some friends were traveling through, and it
Mhm.
was summer at that point. So I got to explore the northern parts that I hadn't experienced over the fall and winter when I first went out there.
Interesting that you said Croatia is the one that resonates, or somehow it is has your part of your heart, because I've been hearing quite a bit about Croatia, and there is a YouTube couple that I watch, every now and then, and they said something similar about Croatia, and I know some other travel groups that have gone. So I may need to add that to my destination list. So, what was it that made you decide, you know what? I'm going to move to Italy. What was the trigger that made you just decide to drop everything and go off to Italy, that first destination?
So I think, like I said,
Mhm.
I've been meditating for a long time. So just
Mhm.
during a meditation, I was not really satisfied and content in my job. I
Mhm.
was sick of DC.
Yeah.
I felt like I outgrew it.
Mhm.
Um, I just felt like something bigger was calling me, but I didn't know what. And I
Mhm.
knew ultimately I would move to California. I was
Yeah.
like, California dream for
Mhm.
sure. My mother lives out here. This will be, the next chapter phase of my life. And I
Mhm.
was like, there's something for me before I make that huge
Mhm.
trek cross
Mhm.
country. And
Yeah.
I did a meditation, and that's when I saw being on my deathbed and never having experienced a European life. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, this is the next thing. And because, I was renting an apartment, like I said, no mortgage. So I was like, what's holding me back? Like,
Mhm.
why I can make this work. So why don't
Yeah.
I just take a leap? And it was, like I said, I look back on it now and I'm like, that was really ballsy of me.
Yeah. Yeah, it
I was
is.
just like, I think when you get to a point where you're just done,
Yeah,
you're like, what's the next thing? I trust it. Boom, let me just take the step. And that's what I
absolutely.
did.
Absolutely. So I asked that because there's always something below. Like there is an exercise that I did earlier in the week where you have to ask yourself why like 7 consecutive times. I forgot what the name of the exercise is. It's by this popular person. And so you answer the first question, why, and then it says, oh, cool, but why? And okay, but cool,
Oh,
but
yeah.
why? Like you have to
Keep
dig deep.
healing. Keep
Ex-
healing. Mhm.
exactly. And so I knew that that vision was certainly a part of it, but what made you open to that vision, and so you just described it that you were done. And so that it makes a lot of sense. And I can certainly understand why you decided to just do it. I have something similar where when I was married and after my divorce, I realized I was like, I don't know how much longer I have to live. Let me just use
Yeah.
this as an opportunity to maximize my life. And so that is why I'm doing some of the things that I'm doing now. So now
Amazing.
we're going to dig a little bit deeper into Shadi, the person. So, what was your childhood like, and how do you think it has influenced your decisions?
Well, I would say in the first half of my life, and it's a little bit now as well, before I started doing this deep inner work,
Mhm.
it influenced everything. It shaped my personality because that's what childhood conditioning does. So my childhood experience was unique in that I'm a daughter of immigrants.
Mhm.
I was made in Iran, I say, made in Iran, born in the USA. So my mother was actually pregnant with me when they fled, and they literally fled. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Argo.
I did.
Ben
Yes.
Affleck, right? When he's in the embassy, my
Mhm.
family was in the US embassy that day trying to get visas to get the hell
Oh,
out.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so so
Mhm.
that sense of like urgency, and you know what's interesting, Patrice, you're gonna love
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Um, my mother was my age when she left Iran for the United
Oh,
States and took
wow.
that leap when I left corporate, left the East
Yeah.
Coast, moved abroad.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I recognize that when I was, doing my travels. But so my childhood was unique in that they had a great life in
Mhm.
Iran. They left everything. They
Yeah.
took a chance
Mhm.
because they saw that the, government was changing, and my mom had the foresight, God bless her, to know that she did not want to raise her kids in that
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
So, I always say that American immigrants that come to America are more patriotic than the
Yes.
Americans born here because they chose to come here and they came here with stars in their eyes. So
Yes.
that was that was my experience. My brother and sister were not born here. I was the first one in our family to be born here. I was the anchor baby,
Mhm.
and I grew up bicultural. So,
Mhm.
no matter how much your family tries to instill cultural values, you are still going to an American school. You still have
Yeah.
American friends. You're living on an American street. So I was kind of stuck between two cultures. I did not relate to my
Mhm.
Iranian side that much. I did a little bit, some things, but it did not help me to fit in.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That was like my life, like bringing the like Persian food to lunch while everyone had bologna sandwiches. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and then I didn't fully relate to the Americans
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
And I would be asked, are you white? Are you not white? Are you, what are you? My hair was big, my
Mhm.
eyebrows were thick. So
Mhm.
I was kind of torn in between two cultures. That was my childhood.
Yeah, and I can actually relate because I'm actually an immigrant myself. I know you were born here, but I was actually born in Jamaica, and I remember, I was the different one, even though of course I looked like a lot of the kids in my school. I spoke differently, I behaved differently, and I found myself in order to come to conform and be liked, doing things to like hurry up and get rid of the accent and some of the things that,
Oh,
so
which is such a great accent.
yeah, I know, I know. And now I can't, even if I
Have it
try,
back.
I
It's
can't get it
gone.
back.
It's gone.
Well, I probably can. If I'm there long enough, it starts to come back. But
Oh my
when I
God.
first get back, they're like, stop it. You told me. Uh, so
Oh, I know. Trust me. When I would talk to my relatives back home, they'd be like, "Oh my God, your accent's so cute." When I would be speaking Persian, and I'm
yeah.
like, "What accent? I don't have an accent."
And in your mind, you're like, I'd sound just like you. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's something. And
Mhm.
and in retrospect now,
Mhm.
with wisdom as we get older, you start to realize, and you have children, I don't have children, but I have nieces and nephews. You start to realize that we're supposed to be different.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
reason we have, there's 8 billion people on this planet. No two people have the same thumbprint or
Yeah.
fingerprint. No
Wow.
two people.
Hmm.
And so like we are supposed to be different.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but when you're a child, you're just trying to fit in. You're like, I don't want to stand out. I don't want to rock the boat, especially as young girls, as
Mhm.
women. So I can say now with confidence that my childhood was exactly what I was supposed to go through to unlearn certain adaptations or coping mechanisms that I took on.
Yeah, yeah. Now, so you shared that you are a recovering corporate professional. So, what was your profession and why do you feel that you needed to recover from corporate America?
Great question. So my profession, when I left in DC was I worked in international business development
Mm-hmm.
for a nonprofit, but even though it was a nonprofit, it was the second largest employer in Washington, DC. It was a
Mm-hmm.
children's hospital. It is a
Mm-hmm.
children's hospital. And it was a very incredible place to work, noble profession, cool job. I got to see the world, but in the kind of safety net of a business delegation, and a corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just felt like something was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just wasn't, like I said, like with DC, it just felt like a mismatch. I had grown.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I missed the second part of your question. Well, I know it was
Well, why do you feel like you're recovering from corporate
oh, recovering.
America?
Recovering, I mean, it's a bit of a dramatic word, but
Mm-hmm.
um, recovering because um, so I went through a process of um, myself, I went through, which is what I help others through it, through a sort of spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And I had deliberately gone through that because I had not hired, but I had invested in a Jungian coach myself
Mm-hmm.
because I was kind of feeling like I'm going in circles with relationships, with my career, the types of bosses I was experiencing. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the common denominator. So by enlisting a Jungian coach, which is working with the unconscious mind,
Mm-hmm.
I was essentially being kind of in a paced way guided into this process called individuation.
Mm-hmm.
I was choosing to expand awareness
Mm-hmm.
with the help of this coach,
Mm-hmm.
and to become more awakened
Yeah.
to who I really am,
Mm-hmm.
and to unlearn everything that influenced me,
Mm-hmm.
to create this persona
Yeah.
that all of us do to some extent or another.
Mm-hmm.
And childhood conditioning contributes to that, society contributes to that, and the corporate system contributes to that. So like I said,
Absolutely.
I grew up with parents that gave up everything for the American dream. They want
Yeah.
their kids to be safe
Yeah.
and comfortable,
Yeah.
not be happy, well, be happy, but they assume that being safe and comfortable is what's going to make you happy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that's normal. That's perfectly normal.
Mhm.
But we're not truly expressing ourselves, or maybe exploring professions or relationships or avenues or lifestyles that would be outside of that parameter. And
Yeah.
so to me, the corporate world
Mhm.
is just a system. It's just another system that influences our thinking,
Mhm.
and it puts you in a box. That's
Yeah.
all it is. And so I was starting to break down those walls myself. That's why I felt kind of limited and shackled a bit in DC and in this profession.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant by recovering. I'm sort of exploring, like, wait a minute, is this wall need to be here? It's self-inflicted. Oh, wait, there's no wall. I don't
Yeah.
even need to be in this, in this
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to think, oh, wow, could I possibly work for myself? Could I be my own boss?
Mhm.
Might I actually leave, the comfort of a biweekly paycheck and 401k and all these beautiful things, shiny things that they lure you in with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because ultimately, when you are in a corporate system,
Mhm.
you are bound by the rule book
Mhm.
and the values and
Mhm.
confines of that system. And this can
Exactly.
be applied to religion as well and government.
Absolutely.
Right. And
Absolutely.
so whatever, it's a bit limiting. And
Hmm.
I think I had outgrown the box a little
Yeah.
bit. I felt stifled.
Yeah.
And again, it has nothing to do, and every corporation is different. I mean, because a lot of startups are more open to this, but at the end of the day, you're going to reach a ceiling. You're going to reach a ceiling in income. You're going to
Hmm.
reach a ceiling in how creative you can be in that space.
That's what,
Um,
yeah.
and frankly, I have always doubted the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday structure.
Yeah.
Why that, you know?
Yeah.
And um, so I started to just question everything, and leaving um, my bubble
Hmm.
was what helped me to actually, I call it the fishbowl. I had to get out of the fishbowl to look at the fishbowl and this was during the second wave of COVID restrictions starting to
Yeah.
kick in all over the world. And then
Hmm.
I was just starting to look at it from the outside, and I'm like, holy crap, like we all live in fear, like a
Yeah.
lot in the
Yeah.
States. And I'm looking around in America and in Europe, people are so chill, laid back. Yeah, they have these restrictions, for health reasons, for public health reasons, but
Hmm.
it wasn't so like intense and serious. And I saw that my career was also in the same way. I was approaching my career life in the same way. No wonder I felt so, tense all the time.
Yeah, so there's quite a few things that you said that I could easily pick up on and can relate to. Number one, you described about four times boxes and walls. And I described the experience that I have been going through as my unboxing process. As a matter of fact, the very first episode of podcast is about my unboxing process. Some of a part of the box was, of course, corporate America and having to adhere to those written rules and unwritten rules in that system.
Mhm.
And it's those
Subliminal.
unwritten rules that make you feel trapped even more because you
Totally.
don't know when you're about to hit up against them, right?
Mhm.
So I definitely can identify and relate to some of the things that you're sharing. So we're now going to talk about how you help others. So many of us, of course, are very familiar with Carl Jung, and I'd never heard of what's called, I want to make sure I use the proper term here, Jungian psychology. Well, of course, we've heard of Jungian psychology, but the Jungian approach to life coaching. And you mentioned that you decided to, explore that for yourself. What made you decide to say, you know what, this is something I can use to help others?
I think it was when I was traveling. So
Mhm.
when I was traveling, because my mind was already starting to open up. Like I said, I left the fishbowl and I
Mhm.
had received coaching. So that individuation process, which is the
Mhm.
process of healing and becoming whole, your psyche essentially is split
Mhm.
when we are conditioned to take on a certain persona and say, no, this is my personality. So anything outside of this is
Mhm.
unacceptable. We
Yeah.
push it away into our unconscious mind, and we don't do it on purpose. It's very subtle. It's unconscious. So we become split. And so I had chosen to get the guidance of a coach to
Mhm.
help me go deeper. I just knew because
Mhm.
I had been doing personal development for so long. At that point, I think it was from my 20s, my mid 20s. I had done a little therapy because I was like, I don't understand. Like, I thought I should like corporate world. I should like working in finance or law or whatever, the door options were growing up in my family. These are your only options, right, for a
Mhm.
profession. I'm like, well, why don't I like it? And why also am I choosing the same kinds of relationships that are kind of unfulfilling, unsatisfying?
Yeah.
So I dug deeper and I found this coach, and it's because really our unconscious mind is creating everything, and we're
Mm.
unaware of it.
Mm.
We are unconscious to it. So really, our minds, only 5% is what we're aware of our
Mm.
potential, of
Wow.
our of all of the memories. It's like this infinite archive. It's personal and it's collective. So it's what
Mhm.
connects all of us. You hear spiritual people saying, oh, we're all connected. So we are all connected. We're
Yes.
connected on an unconscious level.
Mhm.
Um, and it was through this process of going inwards, but on a deeper level. And,
Mm.
for me, therapy felt like it was more surface level. And we still kept going in circles. And I'm like, there's no profound change in my life.
Yeah.
I can try this tactic or this new strategy, but nothing's really changing. And
Mhm.
it's because most therapy models, they only work on an ego level.
Yeah, yeah.
And even most coaching models today
Hmm.
are also still on an ego level.
Yeah,
It's just swapping one personality for like a shinier,
yeah,
prettier, more personality, but you're
yeah.
still disconnected from
Mhm.
the essence of yourself, the truth of who you are, which is in our repressed emotions,
Yeah, that's
things we don't want to look at.
yeah, it's funny for another episode of the podcast. I met someone who is a transformational life coach, but she actually augments the service by through clinical hypnosis as a way to
Mhm.
help people kind of tap into that subconscious. So
Yep.
it's very interesting, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about how that differs from what you do for your clients, because and that's actually one of the first questions too. Like one of my initial follow-up questions, how is, your approach different from other life coaching methods? Other
So I
other
haven't
than other than the influences, like what is it that you're doing that's different from, I would say, most other, if you want to use that term?
um you're facing the things you don't want to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes against our basic instinct. If
Mm-hmm.
there's fire, you turn around and you get the F out,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is counterintuitive. This
Mm-hmm.
process is we're walking to the fire, babe. We're walking
Mm-hmm.
towards it. And the fire is it's false. It's not
Yeah,
real. It's an
yeah.
illusion. Fire is I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't want to do this. I have grief. I have, I'm punishing myself for what I did when I was 10 years old. It's like all these stories. And
Mm-hmm.
we listen to these stories every day. I mean, we
Yeah.
have 80, I think, no, they say 60 to 80,000 thoughts
Mm.
every day.
Wow.
And over 90% of our thoughts every day are the same as yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's because our
Mm-hmm.
personality has been shaped by our past experiences, and not to mention our epigenetics, our DNA, and
Mm-hmm.
the generational traumas we have inherited.
Mm-hmm.
So our personality has been shaped. And so it's this program, it's this box, and we keep having the same thoughts. And then no wonder, like myself, no wonder when I would try to change, I'm like, I keep hitting the walls and I can't change
Yeah.
until you look at the part that you are hiding and repressing and pushing away,
Mm-hmm.
which is the unconscious mind. So it's like an iceberg under the water. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg in most people's lives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the more you bring the iceberg above water, which is the process that we take, and I know I'm using a lot of metaphors, but it's really through facing the
Mhm.
aspects of ourselves we don't want to face. And
Yeah.
it's so subtle, and
Yeah.
it's the smallest, tiniest thing
Mhm.
that I can't look at it on my own.
Mhm.
I need someone also to help me catch my blind spots. And so that is what I help others do, is to catch them where they are stopping themselves,
Mhm.
unwittingly,
Yeah.
unknowingly, unconsciously,
Mhm.
and helping them to face it. Well, why? Why do you choose to do that thing? It's
Yeah.
asking them the hard questions.
Yeah.
My clients are like, you always call me out. I'm like, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna call you out because that's the gold.
Yeah.
That's the gold.
Yeah. So you're also an emotion code practitioner. So tell us what that is and how the two combined approaches. And I know there are other approaches that you use, but the Jungian psychology and the emotion code practice, how do the two combine to really, let's say, maximize? I'm starting to use like corporate
Yeah.
term, maximize the coaching experience.
So, I came across the emotion code when I reconnected with my very first Jungian coach. I
Mm-hmm.
reconnected with her to help me with some things, like some blocks that I had in my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me about the emotion code. And what the emotion code is, it's a book. So you can go out and get it. You can start doing it on yourself as well. And it is It's basically targeting people with physical ailments, chronic issues that they've had clean bills of health, they've seen doctors, they're either that or they don't want to be, for autoimmune disorders, for example, they just don't want to be on meds for the rest of their lives because they're treating the symptom. They want to get to the roots. So
Yeah.
this is essentially, it's similar to the work that I do, but it's a lot faster because it's energetic. So the work that I do is I help people uncover their unconscious mind, what they have repressed. And so for a lot of people, maybe if people are not doing personal development work or really all into the self-help, industry, it might manifest, and they're not really as self-aware. I mean, I was just always in my mind and like, why do I do this? Why do I do that? I was always obsessed with psychology.
Yeah.
Why do other people do this, or do the things that they do? But some people, it might manifest for them these, I guess, the parts that they have repressed, or the past experiences that they have repressed. It might manifest physically for people.
Yeah.
And so that's what the emotion code was geared towards. And so as I've been doing the work, I would have physical symptoms. My weight would fluctuate. My hormones have been fluctuating. Of course, that's, Western medicine attributes that also to age, and it is to some extent related to age. But I would have weird rashes pop up. I would have these unexplainable things happen. And so I told her about it, the coach that I reconnected with, and she was like, well, I can do energy work on you because that's the unconscious mind. That is the way that your mind is kind of alerting you that something's off, or there is an imbalance. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just an imbalance. And I'm trying to get your attention. That's it. And it is rooted in emotion. But I believe everything is rooted in emotion. And I also believe that we are infinite beings and we have the capacity to heal ourselves. I'm not saying it replaces medical intervention. Of course, we need Western medicine, but this is for the people that, similar to, the psychological self-help approach where I just felt fed up. I felt like I was going in circles. This is for the people that feel like they're going in circles with their health. And they're like, I've gone to like 10 doctors and no one can figure out what this is about. Or I've had this weird pain, shooting pain in my leg. No one can figure it out. That's what this is geared towards. So I connect with the unconscious mind, and I'm able to pinpoint the root cause of that pain or issue. I call it subject because I don't like to label things, because it's just an expression. It's your body. It's the message. Your mind, which is our energy field, which is our, it's our, it expresses itself through our body, is trying to alert you, hey, pay attention to me. And so I just pinpoint what it is. And it could be attributed to, your divorce from a few years ago. It could be attributed to a memory that you even forgot because it's just so stored back there, an accident you had as a child. It could be stored to even just something as simple. And, we call it small, but it's not small to a toddler. But if a toddler watches his mother leave the room, they think, oh my God, she's gone. She's leaving me. And in that moment, the emotion can be trapped. And that's just part of the human experience. That's normal. But after it compounds over decades, and combined with, stress, cortisol levels going up, and combined with other stressors in your life, or maybe not eating as well as you could, or certain metals and toxins that's in our makeup, it creates a perfect storm. All of a sudden, eczema on the hand. Do you know what I mean? And so I find the root cause of it, and I release the emotion, which is similar to the coaching work, the talk coaching that I do, which is to help them integrate. I'm not, you can't destroy energy. So emotions are energy. So we're not destroying anything. We are just releasing it. It's like letting air out of a balloon, and then they feel it. They actually get to process it and feel it. And they might get a little weepy, or they might get, and then usually a surge of energy follows with that because it's released. And then over time, the eczema or whatever issue it is we're working on starts to sort of heal itself.
Yeah. So This is, and I think what's also intriguing is the fact that your method combines, as I said at the top of the show, Eastern philosophy, social neuroscience, and of course, emotional energy work that you just described for us. Do you have a specific name for your method? I know many coaches have names. They have a certain approach or combination of approaches, and they have a name. They brand that name. And it becomes the sort of the identifier of the service that they provide. So do you have a name for your method yet? And do you have a client success story that you can share?
Sure. So I don't have like an actual name. I mean, this is I see it as an East meets West approach to
Mm-hmm.
enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a modern world. Um, it's not like we can all just go to a monastery or go to like the jungles of the Amazon and just do ayahuasca and like boom, have these profound insights. This is a practical approach
Mm-hmm.
to becoming unshackled from your past
Mm-hmm.
and to becoming more connected with your soul. So I don't have one specific name. It's a process. It's an East meets West process.
Mm-hmm.
And it was how I was trained as well, because it's I don't want to go off the grid or
Yeah.
completely cut out technology or whatever it is. I mean, for everyone, it's very different. I'm walking people back to themselves,
Yeah. I like that.
and to their truest nature. And
Mm-hmm.
success, I've had a bunch of success stories, but I think what I love to see is I start to see a physical shift
Mm-hmm.
in just at their eyes, and their face lights up. I mean, I remember a consult I did with one client in the beginning before we started, and it was like you could just sort of see like the brooding and the darkness and his posture, and it was almost like a cloud hanging over him, and it was just he was stuck. And
Yeah.
then over time, just seeing his back, his shoulders going back more, and carrying himself differently, walking differently. His eyes were sparkling. His complexion had cleared up. It was really interesting. I was like, oh, this is a lovely side effect to the talk
Yes.
coaching. I wasn't expecting that, but it's like you are embodying more of yourself, your divinity, which
Yes.
is something that we kind of we don't pay attention to. And the more you do that, then it helps you more with your confidence and
Mhm.
your self-trust and your energy and how you carry yourself
Mhm.
in the modern world.
Let's talk about divinity. Talk to me about what you think about, um, yeah, I would love for you to just explain what you think is the divine expression of who we are as individuals and why you think we're not attuned to the fact that we are indeed divine people or divine beings.
I'll answer the last one first because
Mhm.
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because that level of power is not fathomable by our logical mind, by our
Mhm.
ego.
Mhm.
It cannot grasp it. And so, also, um, I'm going to say something a little controversial,
Mhm.
but society is reinforcing
Mhm.
um, the agenda to keep people disempowered.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so to keep us from our divinity. So, and it's not just society, it's ourselves too, because we are society. We are
Mhm.
creating
True.
society.
Yeah.
So our ego is an aspect of ourselves that is purely a protective mechanism. It is in our minds to keep us alive and
Mhm.
socially accepted. That's
Yeah.
its two functions. That's
Mhm.
it. It is not designed to make us successful or make us
Mhm.
feel fulfilled or make us
Yeah.
happy or to express our potential. It's blocking those. It's going to say, hell no, you
Yeah.
cannot pursue that career because you'll be ousted by your tribe if you
Yeah.
do. So
Yeah.
that's all it does. It's this fear mechanism. And the problem is that we believe it, we buy
Yeah.
into it, we listen to the stories every day.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
are all we are all um, born divine,
Mhm.
and then we are conditioned.
Mhm.
Fear is taught, and it's also instinctive.
Mhm.
And so upon that, we build a facade and a persona. I
Mhm.
believe that is why we're here. We are meant to forget our divinity. We are meant to go through the hardships. We are meant to the ups and downs, the breakups, the, layoffs. We are meant to experience both sides
Mhm.
so that we can grow and then consciously choose who we want to be. Not, I don't want to just be successful because that's what my parents expect of me,
Yeah.
but I want to be successful because I have felt and experienced the opposite, the
Mm.
other side
Yeah.
of, and I know I have a purpose here to fulfill, and the success will just be the cherry on top. So it's not like we're just chasing the material thing. This is where the spirituality part, this is what's different in my coaching, to be honest. Actually, now that you've asked that, I'm like, this is the difference.
Mhm.
You cannot ignore spirituality when it comes to becoming authentic and living your truest life,
Yeah.
because we're all spirit and we are all human. We are both physical and
Mhm.
non-physical. We embody both.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so the divinity is essentially, it is it's the process of a kind of unlearning and releasing all of the conditioning. And
Mhm.
it may be just from this lifetime, or it may be inherited as
Yeah.
well. Because
Yeah.
we learn from our mothers, we learn from our fathers, they learned from their parents. And so it's in us. That's what, in Eastern philosophy, they call karma. That
Mm.
is what karma is. So that is our conditioning that we can break and we unlearn. And the more you unlearn it, the more you release it. It's that energy piece that I was telling you about, the emotions, and
Mhm.
you integrate it, you free it, you are then embodying more of your true nature, which is divinity, which is how you were born. When you look at every child, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, they're the most beautiful thing, right? They're just so pure. That
Mhm.
is true divinity. And then, we learn to forget our divinity.
Yeah. 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 It's so I think depending on how open one is to personal development at some point, right? Again, depending on what you're exposed to, depending on what you're reading, and depending on what part of your life that you're trying to develop or get better at. Um, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, you do start to realize that if you're going to improve in these areas, there is a way to go about that improvement. And a lot of it involves going deeper within yourself and then sort of finding out there are all these different lines. So there are the things that you do in the physical world that may be impacted by your emotional life,
Yes.
and your emotional life may be impacted by a spiritual relationship or a spiritual approach. So they kind of start to blend. At least that's the way I'm seeing it. I'm probably overthinking it, but the bottom line is at some point you realize that we are indeed actually divine beings. And that's why I asked the question. I have a lot more I can share about that, at least based on my personal experience, but we're here to talk about you and learn more about you. So I really like your IG handle. I know it seems kind of weird, but I pay attention to the names that people select for different reasons. I used to work in marketing, so I know that people are, typically very intentional about the things that they or the names or the themes or the phrases they use to describe themselves or their businesses. I like that you use this life fulfilled. So what made you decide to choose that handle? And yeah, so I'll leave that question there.
So I chose that handle. I did a past life regression,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I came to learn about several past lives and just the notion of past lives and what does that mean? Does that mean we all have past lives? Who's older? Who's an older soul? Who's not? And
Yeah.
so I remember I was just thinking that I want to feel more fulfillment in my life. That is my goal. That I think that has been my goal from childhood. I want to feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want just any life. I want this life. So it just sort of was this notion of like this one I'm gonna break the barriers and the limits, to quote your show. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the life that I'm going to, no matter what it takes. And that's kind of my North Star.
Yeah.
Um, when things get hard, because things are going to get hard. They do get hard. And
Mhm.
that's part of the journey. My North Star is like, no, I'm here to live a different life. And as crazy as I may look to, people around me, or as woo-woo as I may seem, and that's my goal.
Yeah.
That's my purpose.
Yeah. So again, for those of you who want to learn more about Shadi and her coaching work and her coaching services, you definitely want to check her out at This Life Fulfilled. Again, that's at This Life Fulfilled on Instagram. So we have about 2 or 3 questions left. So I would love to get your thoughts about the life coaching industry in general. So about a year or two, no, 2 or 3 years ago, there were a lot of people that became life coaches. Some actually went to and they studied, different things to become a life coach. They became certified in different organizations. What are your thoughts about the life coaching industry today?
Yeah, it's the second largest growing industry in the world after tech.
Yeah.
But it's also
Wow.
unregulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not a medical or therapy model,
Mm-hmm.
which those paradigms are regulated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so honestly, anyone can call themselves a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I was really averse to even that title
Mm-hmm.
because it has those connotations. Because anyone can call themselves a coach. You don't even need to be certified in
Yeah.
anything or trained in anything. You can just call, and that's okay too. And I think that's the thing. I think that everyone has a message and an
Mm-hmm.
experience to share.
Yeah.
Now, whether they are exploiting it or they have their own personal agenda,
Mm-hmm.
and I could talk about the law of attraction too, but that's probably another episode. But if that is resonating for someone, then that is the experience they're meant to have.
Yeah.
But my experience is that the people that do work on that ego level,
Mm-hmm.
they might have some short-term quick success, but ultimately they're still disconnected from themselves. And frankly, this applies to everyone in a leadership role or a guide role or a mentor role, uh,
Yeah.
in corporate as well. If they haven't done the work, you have unconscious leaders
Yeah.
leading masses, and you could look at the U.S. politics today
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And so ultimately you want a coach who is doing or has done their own inner work. Otherwise, they will keep projecting it into onto their clients and in their
Yeah.
experiences. And that's I have explored, other methods. I always come back to this. It's
Yeah.
like the Jungian psychology it is like the truth of of human existence to me and the human psychological journey. Also, having moved to Southern California,
Mm-hmm.
I've come in touch with a lot of spiritual coaches, and it's more,
Mm-hmm.
about crystals and healing the inner child, and these circles and sound baths and things like that. It's like this whole new world, which is energetic work to some
Mm-hmm.
extent. But I have seen a lot of bypassers. They spiritually bypass. So all they've really done is they've left home or they've left some world and they've slapped on a spiritual persona,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all love and light.
Yes. Yes.
And they're helping to guide people, to whatever it is, and but they have not gone to their dark place. They
Yes.
have not integrated their own demons, as I say. They're not even demons because there's light and gold in our shadow as well, in our unconscious. So there's a whole gamut, but to each his own, because
Mm.
if my words resonate for one person, it may not for another person.
Yeah.
And maybe someone that is more I guess ego driven and more logical in their approach will resonate for someone else, and that's fine too, until they start to realize, wait a minute, I'm still going in circles.
Yeah.
This work is just deeper. It's going to the root. I'm
Mm-hmm.
all about just getting to the root of every block, of every challenge, of every solution.
Now, that is, yeah, that's it. And when you say get to the root, I mean, not even just in terms of how you're working with your clients or even yourself. I mean, like you said, you've always questioned, what's the deeper meaning, or what is this really about? Like, so it seems like, and it makes sense that you were attracted to Jungian psychology because, again, like you said, it's, understanding what's beneath to understand what's on the surface. So there's a theme there. I'm learning with you. So I was learning it
Good
here.
point. Good observation. Yeah, you got it. You got
Yeah.
it. Because I'm also really impatient.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't waste my, I don't want my time to be wasted with like tactics and strategies. And I also don't want to be told what to do as a client,
Hmm.
because I trust myself. I know what's best for me. And
Yeah.
so, and that's the same way I see my clients. Their soul is guiding them. I'm
Hmm.
just clearing the muck,
Yeah.
help them see that,
Hmm.
and then holding them accountable to
Yeah.
taking actions and steps towards it.
Yeah.
Um, but everyday life, I mean, if we want to get philosophical, everything in life is showing us an opportunity to go inward
Yeah.
and really look under the hood. But
Hmm.
most of us think, no, it's my friend that's just being, is irritating me, or it's my boss. They're always so this, they're so that. But everything around us is reflecting our lens,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
our
absolutely. Yeah.
and what we are repressing and
Hmm.
not looking at and avoiding and rejecting about ourselves.
Hmm.
And so we kind of put the shackles on ourselves. For example, if you were taught
Hmm.
not to speak up or not to be more of a wallflower and to be a good girl and be polite. And if you're showing up that way in board meetings and you
Hmm.
get angry that, your boss is speaking up and being loud and you get pissed off, like, God, he's so controlling or she's so controlling. It's like because an aspect of you wants to speak up more. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we're being shown those things every day. And so that's another thing that I take my clients through is that's what shadow work is. We are projecting our shadow onto
Yeah.
others.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you kind of, again, hit the nail on a couple of things. So my question for you is, what does an age has no limit life look like or mean to you?
Um, I think it's just dropping the notion of age period in anything. And I know that's even out there in terms of like physical health, right? And I was what was I was looking at a menu the other day and I was noticing that I was squinting and I was like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? It's even something as simple as that and being okay with it. So first of all, it's so funny because first of all, it's like being okay with that happening, those changes happening,
Yeah.
um, and not attaching so much weight and heaviness and ickiness to it.
Mhm.
But then also knowing that and this is going to be out there, but I can change it if I want to. And that is that divine power that
Yeah.
once you start accessing more of, because you
Yeah.
start to see that, wow, holy crap, I really am the creator of my life.
Mhm.
I'm the creator of my health. I'm the creator of my circumstances. Even if there's circumstances I don't want, I can change them.
Mhm.
And so that is what a that is a no limit life for me.
Mhm.
It's just dropping the age. Age
Yeah.
is it's irrelevant.
It is. It is. Oh, yep. That's part of the reason I started the podcast because I needed, number one, because I made some changes at 49, 48 or 49, start the business. And, my thoughts were, the people that start businesses are like, tech bros and, the people that
Yes,
still have a lot of life ahead of them. And here I am at
I
48,
know.
49, calling myself a business owner, and, what am I really doing here? Am I supposed to be doing all of this? Anyway, so the point I'm making is I realized that in order for me to live out my dreams of traveling the world and all the other things, I needed to take charge of a really big part of my life, which was my occupation, and then
Yes.
become, my own boss, so to speak, open up my own business so I can then have the freedom and flexibility and the funds to actually live life on
Yeah.
my own terms. So, so that's what caused me to actually say, you know what, I know there are a lot of other people doing this, and it's time for us to kind of shine a light on them. So I, definitely understand. And I agree
Yeah.
with a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I dig a little bit deeper, but I've already had some of my own realizations about things like something's not going right, change the way you think, change the way you perceive things. And if you're intentional and believe it will change. So, but yeah, so this has been fantastic. And so my final question for you is, do you have a bucket list? And I know it's like a cliche, but do you have a bucket list? And if not, what is just something that you just can't wait to achieve at some point in, in the near future?
You know, I don't really even call it a bucket list. I just call it things that I want to, I guess, achieve, dreams.
Mhm.
I want to have multiple businesses, and that's
Mhm.
something that's instead of just one. I mean, even one is hard enough.
Mhm.
And I totally hear you on that whole age thing. It's like I think because we're subliminally taught
Yeah.
that after a certain age, you're not supposed to be, you're supposed to be doing other things, or
Yeah.
this whole mentality of like working one job until you're 62 and then you just retire and then you can be free. And I
Mhm.
think that people that challenge that
Mhm.
by choosing differently in their own lives,
Yeah.
it can feel like, oh my God, like we start to kind of question, question it, but it's only because we're doing things that are different. I think I also I want to learn to fly a plane.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, that's a pretty cool one. Yeah.
And then I want to not just live in the States, but I want to consistently live in several different places every year.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. And you've already had some practice.
I know.
You've already had some
Yeah,
practice. I think
I'm ready. That was
yeah.
that. Maybe that's what that was for, you know?
Yeah, you never know exactly. So,
Right.
and the way that I'm seeing and hearing from others that how life can unfold in some very divine ways. It's, it's just I feel like, nothing, there is no limit literally on the things that we can do, the things that we can achieve. I'm sorry, the dreams that
Exactly.
we can actually live out in our reality. So it's been
Exactly.
fantastic getting to know you, Shadi. Again, guys, if you want to find out more about Shadi, definitely follow her on Instagram, and that is at This Life Fulfilled. Shadi, thank you so much for being yet another example of a person who believes that, life has no limit. You left corporate, decided to just head off to Italy, and from Italy, you just kind of, followed, I guess, your desires and ended up in 9 other countries.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrice. And thank you for having such a show and such a platform
Mhm.
to expand people's minds and to push their limits and to show them that, it is possible. Anything is possible. Anything you desire. I believe our desires are holy. And if we can imagine them, I mean, if we can imagine them, then they exist.
Yeah.
They exist. And it's just a matter of us evolving and changing and stepping into that version of ourselves to live them. And if your listeners have any questions, if they want to reach me directly, I'm happy to share my email address, which is Shadi, SHADI, at Intuit, INTUIT -coaching.com.
You absolutely a wonderful example that indeed age has no limit.